Hello and welcome to Desk Deployment. I'm Dave and I'll be talking you through this paint and build video. In today's video we're going to be looking at the process of recycling models by turning these into these. If you enjoyed today's video, remember to hit those like and subscribe buttons and remember to share it with your friends. Feel free to join the community by joining our Facebook page, and don't forget to check out our Instagram account where you can see pics of all the minis that I've been working on. There'll be links in the description below. Anyway, that's enough of the sales pitch from me, let's get into today's video. Before we start, let's have another look at the models that I'm going to be working on today. First off, I remove as much of the basing material as possible and make sure to scrape away any textured paint that is around the feet. After I've got rid of much of the basing material as possible, I get out the goop. This lovely looking and smelling product is called BioStrip 20 paint stripper from a company called Fuse. It cost me about £15 on Amazon. I plunge each of the models into the goop so that they are fully submerged and leave them for about 2 to 3 hours. Afterwards, I rinse them under warm water and give them a good scrub with a stiff bristled brush. This removes the goop in any recesses and gets rid of any loose paint that was still clinging on. I'd recommend having something to cover the drain, as the goop can sometimes soften glue and you don't want bits of your model dropping off and disappearing down the plug hole. As you can see, the paint has been removed, leaving all of the detail. You may find that the plastic does get stained, and with these you can see that the plastic has been stained blue. Next, I bore out the barrels of the guns. Hold up, but Dave, you said that this was a build and paint video. Drilling holes in barrels doesn't count as building. Yep, and you're right. The models might be built already, but we still need to build the bases, so I'm counting it. I start by gluing a few layers of cork as well as some skulls and a few rocks. The rocks were recycled from the original bases. Once the glue is dry, I slap on some texture paint, allowing the skulls and rocks to still show. After the texture paint is fully dried, I use water and PVA mix to stick down some grit and sand. I add another layer of the mixture over the top to help secure it to the base. Moving on to the airbrush, I further secure the basing materials to the base by spraying the bases with the varnish before priming them black. I also prime the models black before giving both the models and the bases a zenithal highlight with a white acrylic ink. Once the white has dried, I spray the models with blue ink, focusing on areas where I want there to be a shadow. Unfortunately, I was a complete dingus and forgot to press the record button when I did this bit. Sorry. After the ink is dry, I paint the weapon and armour seals with black, and I also paint the trim of the pauldron black, as this particular squad is going to belong to the 5th company. One of the Marines has a helix gauntlet which can be used to help heal injured Marines in the field. As the apothecaries wear white armour, I decided to paint the helix gauntlet white. Later I paint the 2 vials red and green. Next, I paint parts of the weapon, holstered pistol, exhaust of the backpack, grenades, and the needle on the helix gauntlet with a silver. I then move on to any leather pouches or straps and paint those with a brown. Whilst that is drying, I decide to move on to the face of the sergeant. I start off by painting the eyes. I paint both of the eyes white and then a dot of black. After the eyes, I paint the creases in the face, scars around the hairline and around the eyes with a dark browny red. I then layer up the face with skin tones until I get to the highlight colour, which I use on the top of the nose, brow line and cheeks. After the face, I paint the hair. I start off with a light brown and then go over this with a browny yellow. With the face complete, I paint all of the oath papers with an ivory colour and the wax seals with a red. I then paint the symbols on the chest and any icons on the belt with a gold. Next I paint the lenses of the scopes and the helmets with a dark red, followed by a lighter red, an orange, a yellow and finally a dot of white. I then paint thin green lines on the wrist screens of the sergeant and the marine with the helix gauntlet. Once the oath papers are dry, I add a black wash to the silver and gold, a brown wash to the oath papers and a purple wash to the leather. After the washes have dried, I dry brush grey over any black parts and ivory over the edges of the armour. It's then back to the airbrush to give the models a gloss varnish. While the varnish is drying on the models, I paint the bases. I start off by painting the edges and the deeper, rockier parts with a brown, before painting the rest with a mixture of brown and yellow. I then paint the raised areas with a mixture of yellow and ivory, whilst the previous layers are still wet. I then paint the big rocks grey and the skulls with an ivory before giving the whole base a brown wash. As the bases are drying, I jump back to the models and give them a pin wash using white spirit and black oil paint. Any mistakes or areas where I add too much are easily corrected using a cotton bud, or for you Americans, a Q-tip. Next I apply transfers to the shoulder pads and then add a layer of varnish over the top of them to seal them in place. Once the bases have dried, I give them a dry brush with an ivory used for the skulls, and then I paint the rims with one of the two acceptable colours, black, with the other one being brown of course. Returning to the models, I clip off the old base. If possible, I try and save the bases as they can come in handy in the future. Unfortunately, in my case the feet were well and truly stuck on, so my only option was to clip them off. Once removed from their old bases, I glue the models to their new bases and give the models a matte varnish. The final step is to use a satin varnish over the face of the sergeant and add a gloss varnish to the wrist screens and the vials of the model with the helix gauntlet. And here we have the revived squad of infiltrators ready to infiltrate the lines of enemies of mankind. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe below, and if you want to help the channel out, please share it with your friends. Remember to check out our Instagram account and feel free to join the community on our Facebook group. Stay safe, hope to see you again soon.